My name is Kim Woodworth, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Economic Development Council of Colorado. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. You have all entered into the webinar on mute for recording quality purposes, but we do encourage you all to ask questions and to be able to connect with all of us today, because this is our opportunity to really, take in the information that we're receiving and being able to bring it back to our communities so that we can actually make some changes at our local levels. So please don't feel, or please feel free to put your questions into the chat section or to raise your hand, and we will be helping you with that. If you have any questions after this webinar, please send them to EDCC's administrator, Bobby, at bobby.blank@edcconline.org. We will follow up after today's webinar with a link to the webinar and the presentation. We will also post it on our website on the webpage dedicated to the virtual series. And finally, please follow us today's discussion on social media outlets at EDCFCO, and be sure to use the hashtags DLS 2025 and EDCC events so that we can follow you. For those of you who are new to us, EDCC is a statewide industry association that supports economic development efforts across Colorado. We connect our communities, our members, and our partners to high-quality educational opportunities and trusted resources, and advocate for sound policies and programs that support a vibrant economy and enhance quality of life for all of Colorado. EDCC members come from a variety of settings. We are rural and urban, public and private sector, for-profit and not-for-profit, and include individual communities, counties, and regional organizations, local and state government, chambers of commerce, universities, and private industry. EDCC has built up a virtual arsenal of information to keep our professionals updated on the latest trends, data, and case studies, and thought leadership papers that our professionals can take back to their local leaders to begin these important discussions at the local level. Make this feature a part of your ongoing professional development and tool that you can use to help inform, educate, and transform your communities. I'd like to take a quick moment to share with you our 2025 events and programming lineup. We are preparing for our biggest signature event of the year, EDCC's Drive, Lead, Succeed Conference, October 26th through the 29th, and we're going to be at the Pueblo Convention Center. Prepare for the 2025 Drive, Lead, Succeed Conference, an assembly of Colorado's top economic influencers and thought leaders. This year's theme, the League of Changemakers. Supercharging economic and workforce development prosperity. Join professionals from various sectors of economic, workforce, and planning departments to collaborate, share innovative ideas, and tackle the state's most pressing economic challenges as we channel our inner superheroes. This is your opportunity to connect, learn, and drive change. Become a sponsor to elevate your organization's profile and support the professionals who are shaping Colorado's economic future. Bobby's putting in the chat section the link to the Drive, Lead, Succeed landing page. We hope to see you all there. So last year, where we are today, last year, EDCC, along with our member and partners at the Denver South and CHAFA, brought to you a virtual series exploring the unintended consequences of construction defects, our perspective on this issue. The series explored why Colorado's housing market is facing such a severe affordability and supply crisis. While many factors are at play, our discussion revealed one central overlooked driver: our state's unique legal environment surrounding construction defects. The core finding was simple yet profound. What was intended to protect homeowners has had a massive unintended consequence on our entire housing market. The data we reviewed was striking. Since the Great Recession, the construction of condos in Colorado has plummeted. Condos, which are a vital part of the missing middle housing, have become almost impossible to build. Developers and builders have largely exited the market, not because of the lack of demand, but because of the risk has become too high. The culprit is our litigation-first culture. Our legal framework intended to protect consumers has made developers vulnerable to expensive, lengthy lawsuits, even over minor technical issues. Plaintiffs' attorneys have developed a lucrative business model, often taking a significant portion of settlements, which means the money doesn't always go to the homeowners to make them whole. This has made underwriters so wary that it's become extremely difficult for developers to get the necessary insurance, or if they can, the costs are prohibitive. The result is a cycle where risk drives up costs, which is in turn stifles supply. And the consequences of this are widespread. The lack of new condos has removed an entire class of housing from the market, making it harder for first-time buyers and those with moderate incomes to find an affordable home. This housing shortage isn't just a social issue, it's an economic one. Our discussions with businesses revealed that the high cost of the and lack of housing are directly impacting their ability to attract and retain talent. Companies are struggling to hire employees from out of state because they can't afford to live here. Our economic vitality is at risk. In conclusion, the series made it clear that while everyone agrees homeowners should be protected, that the current system is broken. It's not working for developers, it's not working for our homeowners, and it's not working for our economy. The key outcome for our series is a call for sensible construction defect reform and can limit frivolous lawsuits, bringing insurance rates down, and encouraging developers to build the housing our state desperately needs. Without this reform, we risk further exacerbating our housing crisis and jeopardizing Colorado's long-term economic competitiveness. Now, with that cheery note, I would like to introduce to you today JJ Ament. JJ serves as president and CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, and he's also a leading voice on economic development and housing policy in Colorado. With a background that includes over 2 decades in investment banking and finance, JJ brings a deep understanding of the financial and business challenges facing our state. He is a key advocate for policy changes that will improve the housing market and ensure Colorado's long-term economic competitiveness. We are pleased to have him here to moderate today's discussion. So with that, let's give JJ a warm Zoom welcome with all of your clapping emojis. JJ, please take it away.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Kim, and thanks to EDCC for gathering us for this really important conversation. And we have some experts with us that we want to get to right away. But you summarized it correctly. One of the biggest economic challenges and really an anti-competitive circumstance for Colorado is housing prices. By most estimations, we're now third in terms of rents nationwide and fifth most expensive in terms of housing prices. So why isn't the market responding? I see lots of colleagues and friends from across Colorado who work in chambers of commerce and economic development organizations. We're markets people. Why isn't the market responding to this supply and demand imbalance? Well, in many ways, it's because the thumb of public policy is interfering with normal market operations. And so I think that's part of the discussion that we can have today and drill down even further, not just on some of the challenges, but then conclude with some of the hopefully opportunities to improve. And we will certainly be able to take the audience participation questions a little bit later, so that be thinking as our expert panelists are visiting and what specific question you might have. But with that, I'd like to welcome and introduce our panelists. We have three experts with us today. Carl Coble is here. Carl is the president and chief executive of Coble and Company, multi-generation developers. And when he started the Front Range home building division called Coble Communities. Carl also grew the development platform and oversaw the company's first foray into other states. So he has experience in how different parts do it. And most admirable to me, Carl is a member of the board of directors at the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. And so he's one of my bosses, and a handsome and charming man as well. So glad to have Carl with us. Also is Clayton with us is Clayton Sharkey. Clayton is the director of construction practice group at IMA Financial Group. IMA is one of the largest independent insurance brokers in the United States. And the construction practice group works with developers, general contractors, and subcontractors on a variety of projects throughout the region. So Clayton brings enormous expertise in what it takes to provide insurance products as it relates to construction. And then also with us is Paul Capps. Paul is the president and CEO of Summit Housing Group. It's a development organization that specializes in market rate and townhomes, build to rent and low-income housing, tax credit construction and developments. Paul has experience both in developing projects and managing projects. He spent many years, like me, in investment banking and has served in multiple COO and CEO roles during his career. So we have some experts here to have this conversation. And Clayton, since we're talking a little bit about insurance and what is the challenges of providing products for development, let's start with you. I've heard you say sometimes that it's not an insurance crisis so much as it's a litigation crisis. Can you tell our group today what you mean by that and what's happening in Colorado legal environment that's causing some of these larger problems beyond just defect?
Sure, Ken. Good morning, everyone. Kim, thank you, and to the EDCC organization for the invitation this morning. Great setup, JJ. So, first of all, construction defect. Let's be clear. What are we talking about? These are claims for property damage post-sale, post-construction, either by homeowners or HOAs in the condo world. And the typical construction defect claim is going to be a mixture of warranty allegations or breach of contract, because obviously homes are sold with a contract. And then they're also going to have tort-based or negligence allegations. And I will tell you that it's not the warranty allegations that are driving this crisis, because insurance doesn't cover contractual obligations. They do cover tort-based allegations of either bodily injury or property damage. In Colorado, if you improve real property, you could be potentially legally liable in tort for up to 6 to 8 years. That is our statute of repose. And the statute of repose starts running at substantial completion. And I'll explain how that leads towards, favoring the plaintiff's bar in a moment here. I'm going to be talking about insurance. Typically, developers buy two types of policies when they're developing a project. The first one is a property policy called builder's risk. And just the title sounds like, well, builder's risk, that should be the policy that covers everything. Well, builder's risk, like I said, is a property policy, and it covers against exposures such as theft of materials, or if there was a fire or a windstorm, hailstorm. But those policies get canceled when the project is done. And as I mentioned, construction defect are claims post-construction. So what insurance addresses those? And that answer is general liability coverage. We all have general liability coverage if we're renters or if we're homeowners. We have our annual or semi-annual renewals, and part of that is a liability policy that protects you if you cause some bodily injury or property damage. Well, all developers have to purchase liability coverage. Either their lender requires it, their capital partner, or it's just a good business decision. And these general liability policies are at the crux of the problem, because I'll talk about that in a moment. But the first thing is that you need to know about these general liability policies, that they're really like two contracts in one. The first is a broad duty to defend. So if they receive a complaint or a claim, potentially triggering coverage, they are duty bound to investigate and most times hire an attorney if they receive a letter from another attorney, and then they have to hire experts to assess what the damages are. The other portion of a general liability policy is a duty to indemnify, actually pay a claim subject to the terms and conditions of the policy. So the general liability policies, that's the issue in Colorado and other construction defect states. The plaintiff's bar has a very, very good business model. When you take the statute of repose, which starts running from substantial completion, and you know that these general liability policies have a broad duty to defend. So just a mere allegation of property damage will trigger that obligation. When you couple those two together, the plaintiff's attorneys know when the statute of repose is going to start to run. And they many times will get themselves invited to and get hired by an HOA. And the plaintiff's attorneys will remind the board members on the HOA that if the statute runs, then they will be time barred from bringing a claim, and that they have to find and make a decision to file that claim before the statute runs. And they will also remind the board members that they have a fiduciary duty or potential personal liability if they don't, make a decision to sue, and then later on the statute runs and they find out that there was a claim. They will remind the board members that they could potentially have a fiduciary exposure there. So this has developed into a cottage industry over the years. And the result is high frequency of claims and high severity. And in my world in insurance, as far as affordability, if you have low frequency and low severity of claims, everybody wants the right coverage. But if you have high frequency and high severity, then nobody wants to write it. And that's what happened going back to 2000, 1998 to 2000, with the increase in the number of lawsuits. Standard insurance companies like CNA, Travelers, and Zurich, they all exited the market. It's what we call class underwriting. They don't care how good you are, what your claim record is. As a class, if you're doing residential for sale, you were not able to get a renewal, or they will not quote you. And that results in that insurance right now, since 2000, for developers, is with a company or a class of insurance company called excess and surplus lines. Their pricing is very expensive and their terms are very restricted. Let me just leave you that if, let's say, Carl was going to build an apartment, or Paul, and it was 100 units, 10 million to build. If that was an apartment, we could get insurance for them for about 1%, maybe a little over 1%. Same building, same construction, same number of units. If it's now for sale, it's going to be 4 to 5 times higher. And that's all because of the high frequency and the costs associated with it. So I will leave you, I'll turn it over to Carl, but these general liability policies are the target. These policies are what's funding the motivation for the plaintiff's bar to file these lawsuits. They will typically get on a contingency fee basis 30 to 40%. So we'll talk more later about legislation and what happened this last session. But now, Carl, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, Carl,
Thanks,
I think
Clayton.
as a
Okay.
customer, Carl, I think this would be super interesting for you as a customer of insurance. And I know you to be a good builder and delivering quality products, but you've dealt with these issues directly. Can you walk through what a real world example is of a construction defect, so that people can
Yeah,
have a better understanding of that?
yeah, happy to do it. I'm going to share my screen here. And what I'm going to show you is the what we receive as a developer. This is a real world claim that we had, a defect claim. And what happened was, and this was, by the way, a community that we had built in the Denver area. The home prices started in the mid 400s when we originally started. So this was a for sale, market rate, affordable product, the type of thing that everybody wants. And so what you're looking at the screen, so what they did was they had a consultant, and by they, I mean the plaintiff's attorneys, had a consultant walk around the exterior of our building and take photos. And then they sent us these photos and they said, here's all the defects. And what I want to call out here, so there's, I've got 3 examples here, and they're calling out the brick veneer support and weather protection. Now, they don't even say what's wrong with it. They don't say against which standard they're judging that it to be wrong, but they found something wrong with this photo. or the, and by the way, this was a project that was completed. We've gotten a certificate of occupancy from the municipality that we built this in. So, we had a bunch of people that had looked at this that said this was fine and this was good to go. And by the way, there was no damage that they could point to, right? This was just walking around the exterior of the building. Here's another one. They said non-compliant trim at horizontal flashing. What standard is it non-compliant against? What is non-compliant about it? That none of that was included in the claim. And then finally, non-compliant surface drainage. Same issue. There were 30 photos like this, just going through and saying, "Hey, this is a defect, if you will." The plaintiff's attorneys suggested that we settle after receiving this in a one-page letter to give you an idea of how how it's so this is what we get, right? And so I dare anybody to find actual damage here. And when you look at construction defect, I think it's important to make the distinction. Most of the folks are not getting sued on damage. They're getting sued on defect that might potentially cause damage in the future. And I don't know that there are many other industries where you can be sued and have to pay for the potential of future damage. But that is what is going on right now in the state of Colorado related to construction defects. And I think we'll get on a little bit later on the financial fallout of these. But just so you know, this and another lawsuit pushed our firm out of the entry-level townhome market. We won't build them. They're more susceptible for getting lawsuits lobbied at you, and there's a couple reasons for that. The first is at the lower price here, the settlements tend to be roughly the same in our experience, whether it's a $450,000 townhome or a $900,000 townhome. And if you're buying a $450,000, if an attorney is there telling you, "Hey, we're going to get you, $50,000, $60,000 out of the settlement," it's a much higher percentage of your sale price and much more impactful for you than if it's double the price. The other thing is the higher priced townhomes, those buyers are a little more sophisticated and they recognize that there is downside that the plaintiff's attorneys will not share with any of these buyers, but there's downside. You are claiming once you initiate a lawsuit that there's something wrong with your home. And until it's fixed, you're not going to be able to sell it. And while it's under the cloud of that for a period of a couple of years, it is impactful negatively to these residents. And it's all furtherance of the plaintiff's attorneys trying to get some additional money. So I want to just, the key point that Clayton said here fundamentally is to get more insurers back into the marketplace. We need to change the outcome for the insurance policies that they're writing. And these frivolous lawsuits are really impacting their willingness to come into this market.
And Carl, I think you showed it's not like something's broken. And even the letter you got from the attorney wasn't, "Please come and fix these issues that are creating
No.
risk." It was just, "Hey, we found these things against our standard. We think you should just settle," to make it simple and easy for them to collect a fee and move on when there was really no risk to the homeowner at all.
No, and they frankly, it took some negotiating to get the opportunity to talk to our homeowners, right? Our home buyers, and the plaintiffs' attorneys were there during that discussion, and it's clear that they had a number of folks ginned up on this. I will mention that this particular community also had a state congressman for the state house that was an owner here. So to give you an idea of how troubling this can be. But you're right, JJ. We weren't ever given an opportunity to fix it. When we eventually had to settle this claim, we had a real-time quote from a reconstruction group that was going to fix every single thing that they said was wrong. And we disagreed that any of those, there was some stuff that we were going to fix, and a lot of stuff we just said, "Hey, we don't think we need to," but all right, we said, "Fine, we're going to fix everything." Well, the claim settled about 30% higher than that number, and I will let you guess where that 30% went.
Yeah, I can imagine. Clayton, from an underwriter's perspective, I mean, you kind of mentioned this, but it seems like then insurance products for development in Colorado, what used to be a generally available policy now seems to become pretty boutique with so many insurers who are like just leaving Colorado entirely. Are we among the worst states in the country? Are we the worst state in the country? And how does an insurance company make any kind of risk assessment when you've just heard from Carl that if you build a for sale product, you should just assume that there will be litigation?
Great question, JJ. We are number one. The underwriters in the excess and surplus lines market consider Colorado to be the number one construction defect state. And I had mentioned that since 2000, the standard insurance companies left, that class of business, and we're in the excess and surplus lines market. By my estimation, we are probably in the fourth or fifth generation of the different excess and surplus lines markets, insurance companies that had come in, thought they could make money, and then they exit the state. These excess and surplus lines insurance underwriters are not as regulated as standard markets, and they have no obligation to write this class of business. They can take their capital and go someplace else.
So that's
So
kind of an extraordinary thing because I'm sure my chamber and economic development colleagues on the phone would hear things when they talk about it. Same thing I've heard. Well, we can't be worse than California. But what you're saying is, in fact, we are worse than California and are the worst state in America when it comes to these issues.
I have that conversation all the time with these excess and surplus lines underwriters, and Colorado is number one.
So Paul Clapp was with the Paul. You do business like Carl in multiple states. Is that validating to you, Paul? And do you share that point of view? Because I think again, all of us who work in economic development want Colorado to be the best. We want to be attractive. We want to be inviting. But we're hearing maybe we're not. Paul, tell us about your experience in Colorado and is it how does it relate to your business in other states?
Well, it is more expensive to do business in Colorado. We love Colorado. It is a hub for our business. Um, we have passed on multiple uh, build to sale projects just because of the increased cost of insurance and the increased liability that we would face. I had a condo project in a mountain town that it was pretty much teed up, and I killed it at the last minute. That would have created 100 affordable condos for sale. And builders risk, the construction defect was the main reason we didn't pursue that. We've stayed in our lane in the mainly affordable and workforce space in the for rent market. So I don't have the direct impact of construction defects in my world. However, indirectly, the impact has been significant. We're getting ready to start a modular project in a mountain town, a tax credit deal. Will be the first modular tax credit project for rent. Just builder's risk and liability insurance on a 66 unit project is pushing $500,000. That is a significant increase in that we see, and it's extremely expensive compared to other states as well. So it's taking the economics out of and the incentive for us to even do affordable projects, even with tax credits as a part of that capital stack. There are no economics in there. There are no positive economics. And if we can't make money to fund continued expansion, then we don't do it. We are spending more time in other states now than we are in Colorado, and that's really sad. We'd love to do a lot more business.
Well, thanks. And I think that everybody on the call would agree too that in Colorado, affordable housing challenges are not exclusive to the Front Range or our more urban areas. Affordable housing for mountain resort communities, our rural parts of Colorado are equally experiencing this challenge.
Sure.
And is it just litigation, or it sounds like we're
No,
expensive in other ways, Paul?
it's other ways as well. I'll give you an example. We've got a project in the Front Range in Longmont. 4 years ago, property taxes, or 5 years ago, property taxes on this 140 unit project was $75,000 a year. Insurance was about $75,000, $80,000 a year. This year, property taxes are $225,000 and insurance is $275,000. And a project that was financially feasible is now borderline becoming non-feasible, where we have to fund it year in and year out. And in this tax credit world, our rents are set by HUD. We have no flexibility. We can't raise the rents. We have no controllables. You got In-N-Out Burger paying $25+ an hour for help. In this affordable space, we can't afford $75,000 employees, but that's what they're looking for. So it's impacted us across the board at every project. And the project I mentioned a moment ago, with the builder's risk and general liability, it was a rural mountain town which desperately needs housing. But this project is in jeopardy because of insurance costs primarily. Then you've got the wind hail coverage we have to have. We have wildfire issues. It is just out of hand.
So knowing we need risk capital, it seems like then a project's financials can go from being profitable to being break even or a loss. And you're constrained on your revenue side, but almost unconstrained on the expense side.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, we can't in the affordable space in the tax credit world just raise rents to cover the deficit that we may experience. Can't do it because HUD limits those. So there's one person or the one group you don't want to get sideways with. They're called the Internal Revenue Service. So if we do that, the IRS comes to visit, and then a lot of bad things happen. So there is a crisis. Landlord-tenant law changes has drastically impacted the management side of these too. So when you roll it all together, affordable housing is not economically viable right now. Don't spread that around, but I'm just telling you, it is challenging without a lot of soft funds, grants and other soft funds. None of these things will work. Fortunately, in Colorado, there are sources of soft funds, but that'll get the project built, but it doesn't address keeping it moving down the road. And that is a dilemma that will come back to all of us over the next few years if something doesn't change.
So, Carl, we just heard Paul said it's changed his company's behavior on where they'll invest and where they won't, where projects. And you just mentioned even that you'd exited some of the townhome market. Can you explain from your point of view the risk calculation that led to that decision? Because you're in the business of building, and to have to choose that, well, we're not even going to try to build that. Why is that? And why is it only that people sometimes see $1 million condos being built, but that's not solving our affordability problem?
Yeah, it was a painful decision for us, JJ, because frankly, I'd love to be doing more of those. Putting aside the fact that we think it's important for the community. From our perspective, you have higher sales velocity. They're easier to build. Generally, it's a little simpler, and they're just great projects. But because of the fact that once you're in a lawsuit, it's not only the financial impact, but also my team gets completely sucked up into these things. And so there's a massive opportunity cost down the road for us to do one. The deal that I showed pictures on, that lawsuit effectively wiped out our profits. So that went from being one of our better deals to one of our worst deals because of the lawsuit. And I'll mention that once the claim has been filed, you're on this conveyor belt, and the machine is set up to extract money effectively from the insurance companies. And so I asked, I was pretty green. My first one of these I'd gone through, so I was asking, what turned out to be naive questions. But I said, hey, can we claim that since there's no damage, that this lawsuit can be thrown out? Our own defense attorney told us that we couldn't do that. She couldn't ethically allow us to do that because once we said there was no damage, or tried to claim that there was no damage, rather, our insurance carrier would no longer carry the claim, right? So now we're on our own with the massive liability. And then we were at the negotiating table during, before, arbitration. I said, hey, how is this going to work? And they said, well, the plaintiff's attorney's just going to continue to find defects and build the claim up all the way through the process, and the arbiter is going to split the baby. And I said, well, look, there's a lot of these aren't actually legitimate. And our counsel again said, well, the arbiter wants to get hired again. And so if they start skewing one way or another, they're not going to get hired, right? So here we are with a couple of these situations where, the facts of the case don't matter, right? It's all about how do you get to a settlement claim and how do you get money out of the insurers or the developers effectively for this cottage industry that the plaintiffs' attorneys have created. So we'd love to continue to do these. On the more expensive condos, there's a couple of reasons. One, we'll do those because we can pay more. I mentioned the sophistication of the buyers and the likelihood of the best way to limit a lawsuit is to not get in one. So that's why we feel the higher ends are less likely to engage in a lawsuit. But also, when you have more money coming in the door, you have more opportunities for the CYA type expenses that go into a project, right? You may go above and beyond on STC rating, which is sound attenuation. So we already build well above what you would find in a regular apartment complex on the for sale units. On the higher end townhomes, you can go even further, right? You could almost set a bomb off in one of the units and you wouldn't hear it next door. And we're able to buy third-party reports that show that we've actually built to standards. We do that anyway, and we've got inspectors that walk through the doors from the municipalities, but that report helps us in a claim in some respects. So those are the types of things that we're able to do at the higher end condos, but not the lower end townhomes, which is a real shame because that's the type of density and the type of middle income housing, naturally affordable housing that we feel is needed.
Yeah, and that's why it becomes $1 million or more, because all of those additional costs. Paul, on the construction side, we talked a lot about for sale, but you Colorado, and I think you've experienced some frustrations with Colorado, particularly around landlord-tenant relationships and regulations and new laws. How do things like a high rent delinquency rate or an inconsistent legal interpretation between judges in different counties, and how does that all add to the overall financial burden and discourage investment in housing? Because just more units is naturally affordable because it's just increasing supply. But
Right.
if you're not able to have rent paid, or you have a different interpretation of Colorado law depending on what courthouse you're in, that seems challenging too.
I think in any state, you've got different interpretations of landlord-tenant law from county to county, from judge to judge. It's never going to be, in my experience, consistent across the board. But in certain parts of the Front Range, which I will not identify, I will tell you that we have one tenant in a small 40-unit brand new project. I'm in this project at $575,000 per unit. It was completed 2 years ago. It's, if not the most expensive LIHTC project in the state, it's got to be second. But we have a tenant that hasn't paid rent in a year and a half. I'm finally getting him out next month. The magistrate finally has agreed for him to exit. He owes us $28,000, and we're not able to collect that money. So when you look at that kind of interpretation of landlord-tenant law, where we're at a disadvantage right out the gate. It doesn't matter that he's violated his lease, and in that lease there are multiple components that he did not adhere to. None of that matters. He hadn't paid the rent. Supposedly that's the catalyst. And I know evictions are up in Colorado, but I'm just telling you, there are pockets that you can't move people out. It has a significant impact. That project will lose money for the year because of that one tenant. And there's nothing, again, I can do about it. So it's inconsistency in the interpretations. And it's whatever judge or magistrate or whatever you want to call them that we're in front of. He may have had a bad day. He may just have been a tenant advocate in a past life. I don't know what it is, but it's brutal. It's brutal. And we see that differently from different parts of the state. But some parts of the Front Range, I'm not going back.
Yeah, that's tough on stability and predictability. Well, look,
JJ, can I follow off
Please,
on real
Carl.
quick on something that Paul said? So, because we operate and manage affordable housing apartments as well, and I want to just expand what that does, right? I mean, you may have sympathy for this individual that can't make rent, but to stay there and cause Paul's property to take a loss, he's now got to make other financial decisions. We have to deal with this too. You know what? We were going to replace the carpet or clean it, and we're not going to do that. Or we were going to paint, and we're not going to do that. I mean, you start really looking at, and that impacts every other affordable renter in that community negatively. So, when we hear these stories, the tendency for many is to try to have sympathy for the person being evicted, but step back and look at the impact to everybody else in that community that's done everything right. And it is these types of decisions by the judges are myopic in my view, focused on the person in front of them and ignoring the broader impact that this has on an entire community of sympathetic affordable renters.
I couldn't agree more, Carl. Thank you.
Well, as you can see by the folks who are on this call and part of this discussion, these are the doers around Colorado. They're the ones that hear all this and they say, okay, well, then what do we need to do? And really, why hasn't it been done yet? And Clayton from IMA and the chamber and others, we know there have been legislative efforts. We've worked on them, but we still haven't fixed the problem. Clayton, in your opinion, from the underwriting point of view, what is the core issue here that needs to be addressed, and where have we missed? What would true reform look like so that insurers might re-enter this market?
All right, great question. So you heard me mention that we are or Kim mentioned, a litigation first. Let me go back in time. In 2003, I had the privilege of working with Carl's dad, Buzz Coble, at the Colorado legislature. Prior to 2003, the first notice that a developer would get would be the lawsuit. And these great developers, they're like, well, what's wrong? Let me fix it. So in 2003, we did the, Construction Defect Reform Act, SDARA 2. And SDARA 2 is many times noted as a right to repair. Well, you got to be careful. We have the right to make an offer to repair. And as I said in my opening statement, the plaintiff's bar gets hired by the HOA. They send the initial letter, and in that letter, it says, don't contact my client. So the whole theoretical underpinning of the 2003 law has been eviscerated because the plaintiff's attorneys have hijacked this notice provision. So we don't have a true right to repair in Colorado. So people have been asking, what do we need? Well, I don't think we should have litigation first. Obviously, we all have a right to sue, but that should not be the first thing. We should have a meaningful opportunity to repair. You heard Carl talk that he went out and had a restoration company that looked at it, and very reputable, because sometimes people say, well, I don't want the original developer to repair. Okay, we understand that. But in that case, Carl went and got somebody else to do the repairs. But that's not allowed. And to prove what I'm talking about is now we have over 20 years since the enactment of that law. And I frequently, as an attorney, I talk to other attorneys and say, all right, these are the men and women who defend policyholders paid by, these men and women are paid by the insurance company, but they are ethically obligated to focus on the policyholder, like, Carl. And I asked them, over the years, how many repair-based settlements have you been involved in? Because we always make an offer to repair. And they all laugh at me because there's no financial incentive for a repair-based solution. As you had mentioned, JJ, the percentage, the 30 to 40%. So this is a cottage industry litigation first. And that's what needs to be changed. I was at the legislature again this year and probably read 20 different versions of the bill and represented three different, organizations trying to get meaningful reform. And every version that we offered that had a repair-based solution did not see the light of day. There was absolutely no discussion at the legislature on a repair-based solution. And I will just tell you that the plaintiff's bar is very well funded and very well represented at, the Colorado legislature. And so what we have, it's a cool name, the Dream Act, the Dreamers Act, whatever it is, so that we can get affordable housing. In many ways, I'll say two good things about it. One, it's voluntary, and I don't know of anybody that has, since the enactment, said, "Oh, I'm going to go back into entry level because of this new legislation." Nobody has done it. The second thing is that it amended SIDARA, which is the legislative. Yes, we're still dreaming. It amended the notice provision to like 66 or 65%. I will tell you that I've had developers who have won votes. They have plaintiffs' attorneys are obligated to get a vote from the community. And I have developers who have won that vote, but I've also seen plaintiffs' attorneys come in with mocked up damage reports, and they will say, well, you may want to rethink your position not to go forward on a lawsuit because I have a report here showing that there is damage. And I will remind you of your fiduciary duty as an HOA board member that if you don't move forward and then the statute of repose period runs and you are now time barred, you could be potentially personally liable. So the DREAM Act did not address either the severity or the frequency of claims. And in ways, I could say it's actually made it worse. So there's nobody in the underwriting community who has paid any serious attention to the Colorado DREAM Act. It's business as usual.
So Clayton, if I can put that in different words, it sounds like in some cases, are you saying that that an HOA board member is being threatened with litigation if they don't litigate against the builder?
JJ, they're just professionally being reminded of their fiduciary liability. Yes, they're being threatened.
Okay. Because that's something for a volunteer member of an HOA board when they're being told by an attorney that, hey, you better do this, or you might be the defendant in a case.
They just thought it'd be kind of cool to be sitting on the HOA board, and they had no idea as to what they're going to be facing. So, like I said, I've had probably a half a dozen votes go in favor of let's fix it, only to have the plaintiff's attorney produce a report. And on all 6 cases, they changed their mind and pursued litigation.
So Carl, are there other, from a perspective of a developer who does business and Paul too, like, again, with all the economic development professionals on this call and business leaders, it seems like we do have a sort of a specific interest against a specific interest of the plaintiffs bar against the diffused interest of all of us that want housing and more housing and supply. The only solution to that is going to be all of the folks on this call talking to their local state legislator, because the most credibility is going to come from our local economic development professionals, our local chambers of commerce, to try to overwhelm the enormous presence of the trial bar at the Colorado Capitol building. What are the things that we as economic development professionals or business leaders, what can we communicate to state legislators? What is the kind of thing they need to really get in order to act?
Yeah, I mean, JJ, I think the core of it is we have a really great group of developers and people that want to do this type of work and want to provide housing, right? We are financially incentivized to do it. It's our business model, but we also have a mission-based program of it. Paul certainly does. We do. And that's the case for a lot of the groups that operate in the state and in the Front Range. And the core message is let us do our jobs, right? Let's remove the rent-seeking behavior that's preventing us from wanting to deliver the type of product that people want. Right now, there's a major gap between the homes that are available and the homes that people can afford. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But one of the biggest on the entry level side is the ability to provide a lower price housing unit. We in Colorado are a little bit at a disadvantage. We're a high altitude plateau desert. We're not near any ports. We're kind of the end of the line rail for a lot of the products that come in, and we're a little bit on a labor island. So that means if we did everything right, we'd be at a bit of a disadvantage. But people want to be here, and we've got a good ecosystem of developers. But we're not doing everything right. We're putting roadblocks in. We're letting rent-seeking attorneys come in and create a cottage industry on the backs of those of us that are working hard to provide housing. The best ROI I know of for real estate in the state of Colorado is a plaintiff's attorney for a construction defect. I think the group that we got sued from on our particular deal, near as we can tell, they spent $60 to $80,000 on consultants report, and then ended up with well over $1 million back to their firm after the settlement. And we shouldn't be shy about that they will call out developers' greed and unscrupulous nature. There's no reason why we shouldn't be shy about turning the tables on that, because they are truly that they take no risk. They don't provide any legitimate. The frivolous claims provide no legitimate benefit to the community, and so to me that's a narrative there, and we shouldn't be shy about saying it, because we've been kind of tap dancing around this for a while, and we're not getting anything done. And the legislatures are well intentioned, but look, when they sit, when they take the legislation and they go ask the plaintiffs' attorneys what they think about it, right? That's like getting the mountain lion and the white-tailed deer together and, negotiating the terms under which the mountain lion gets to kill the deer, right? It doesn't really help at the end of the day. And we need to be able to call that out.
Yeah,
It
Carl,
sounds
that's
like
great.
public policy continues to be the issue. Sorry, Clayton, did you
No,
want
I'm
to?
sorry, JJ. I just wanted to again echo what Carl said. We have now over 20 years of experience after the tort reform in '03. And, there's no central clearinghouse that says how many construction defects have been filed in Colorado. You have to go, I remember in '03 when I testified and tried to get some numbers, you couldn't call Jeffco or Denver court to say how many construction defects. We would have to see every lawyer has a lawyer number, and you would have to just see the number of cases assigned. That's about as close as we can to tracking, how many of these lawsuits. But anecdotally, when you talk to defense attorneys and you say, of how many cases have gone repair versus litigation, like I said, they'll just laugh at you. So, just think of the number of lawsuits that have been filed since 2003 and what are the number of repair-based solutions. I'm going to go out on a limb and just say it's, little to none. And that is the telltale sign. That's telling you that there is a real issue here. It shows that there's a financial incentive that is just too good to pass up, for the trial bar.
Yeah, well, it sounds like still political and policy ideas, and the Colorado legislature meeting again here shortly for the third out of the last 4 years of special session.
Yeah.
We
Well, yeah. No, JJ, please, and then I'll finish up. Yeah.
No, I was just going to mention that we've of legislatures around the country to pass legislation as a percentage of bills introduced. Colorado is the top 3 states in passing those bills. We've passed almost 800 new laws in just the last 18 months in
Wow.
Colorado, but we still can't seem to focus on passing the law that will make the biggest difference to our competitiveness. And that really is bringing down the price of housing in our state. And again, not just along our urban corridors, but certainly in our rural communities and mountain resorts as well.
JJ, could I add something? I wanted to echo everything Carl said, and I completely agree with him. I'd like him to put the slides back up and point out where the construction defects were. I hadn't been around, I've been around the block a few times and I didn't see any of it, but the impact, even though it doesn't directly impact construction defect expenses, don't really impact directly our affordable rental projects. It has significant um, impact on them through the increased cost of insurance and everything else that goes with it. So it's just not construction defect on its own. You fix that. It translates across the board in the rental and the for sale industry. So it directly impacts everything, even the rental projects through our increased cost of insurance.
And Paul, haven't you had some interesting discussions or interactions even with university students who are thinking maybe new taxes are the
Yeah,
answer?
okay. Let me, if you want to go down that road, I'll bite here, JJ. I was on a panel for an affordable housing class at DU last fall, and each of these students broke up into groups of threes and presented their idea of how to make housing more affordable in Colorado. Some of these ideas were scary. I'll share one. They wanted to take condos in mountain towns and resort areas and increase their property tax rates to more commercial rates, which the effect of it would be about a five-fold increase in property taxes for these people that just have condos that they visit. They don't rent them, they just visit whenever they want to take a vacation. Aspen, Vail, Beaver Creek, you name it, wherever. My comment was, well, that's going to decrease the amount of interest in buying or building a condo in Colorado. And they said, well, that's the whole idea, because they also wanted to force them to rent these out if they didn't occupy more than X number of weeks a year. So the end result of higher property taxes, forcing them, their idea to force them to rent these things short term to the local workforce, the impact of that would be a significant decrease in the valuation of those condos. And eventually, if it were me, I would sell mine and go to Park City. And they go, well, that's great. So we'll have more supply of affordable housing. And I go, well, that's true. However, the people that spend the money at the grocery stores, the restaurants, the boutiques, and keep you employed are no longer coming to your town. They're going to spend their money in Utah. They're going to spend their money in Big Sky, Montana, or wherever, and then you don't have a job. So some of the ideas are out there and they're scary. Nobody seems to think about the long-term implications of actions, and they are there.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and those of us again in Chamber of Commerce land and economic development worlds need to be conveying these messages to our policymakers. The folks on this call, I'm sure, have seen or heard me say before that the laws of economics still apply even at Colorado's altitude. And so when we have this much demand and we're not meeting it with supply, prices go up. And in this case, they've gone up to an area that is anti-competitive and frankly unsustainable. But it isn't the market that is in dislocation. It really is the thumb of public policy on the scale that's keeping the market from responding. So with that, we have time on the program here now for the experts on the call to hear from the other experts on the call. So lots of folks around Colorado who are experiencing these challenges in their local communities, and we appreciate everybody's time and want to create this opportunity for anybody in the audience to put a question in the chat or come off mute if that's possible and ask your question to any of our panelists. And this is an opportunity you have to directly engage with these experts on issues that are really important, or to, it is a complicated and challenging piece of law of legislation and circumstance. So if there are questions you want more clarity on, this is our opportunity.
Thank you, JJ. I would like to start off by asking, what are some creative solutions that we can start to think about, maybe from, when I was putting my notes together, I was thinking and asked Clayton, well, what if we changed how the plaintiffs are, how much they are able to receive in percentage cost in the, you know, going through the process. Maybe they can't get 30 to 40%. Maybe there's a cap of what they can do. Or, Carl, you came up with a suggestion and some of the direction that unfortunately you've had to go through with, HOA versus a metro district. Can you each kind of maybe give us some ideas of how we can maybe start to chip away at this by, creating some of the environment for us to incentivize better behavior.
I guess I'll go ahead, Clayton.
No, no, go ahead, Carl. I'll follow you.
I was going to say, so, one thing for me, this is a radical idea. You shouldn't be able to sue unless there's damage. That seems like a crazy thing. And then subsequent to that, a right to repair, right? I think those two things, from my perspective, would help draw me in. And Kim, you referenced it, and I forgot to mention it. One of the things that, I talk about when I was talking about Paul, the decisions we have to make because of these laws are not good for the communities, right? We'd rather not make them. And by that, I mean, we are typically engaging in what we would call a party wall agreement, which is an agreement that just kind of manages the relationships between the two adjoining homeowners instead of an HOA to avoid the liability created with Kiowa. And what that means is there's no mechanism for active management. There's no reserves that are being pulled aside. So in 10 or 15 years, when the buildings need to be repainted, or in 20 years or 25, when a roof needs to be repaired, there's no reserves for it. So it's a massive capital hit to the owners at the time. Whereas if there was an HOA, there'd be reserves created. So again, there's these downstream effects of the laws right now that people aren't talking about. But again, to me, if we could get actual damage and a right to repair, I think that would drastically change at least my perspective of re-entering the market.
Agreed. When Kim and I were talking before the session about maybe amending how plaintiffs' attorneys are compensated, if you thought they were motivated on the DREAM Act, you would see nothing compared to that if you're
They'll come out of the woodwork for that one.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm on board, but nope, I don't think it has a chance. Right to repair? Absolutely. Because underwriters can go ahead and look at Coble and Company and say, okay, if you have a claim, how do you handle your internal warranty, which by the way is excellently. Or if somebody doesn't want Coble to do it, what are the vendors that you use? These are things that underwriters can underwrite against. And that's why a true right to repair would resonate with the underwriting community.
And I know we've been focused on litigation under construction defects, but are there other things? In one of our questions from one of our guests here, those are really state level policies. What are things that can happen at the local level that might also improve? And Carl, I know we've talked about this. Clayton, you're certainly aware. Paul, you too. The zoning, entitlement, fee structures, review timelines, all of these things are contributing to the cost of housing. But maybe focus a little, since we've been talking so much about the state, what are some local solutions that our economic development professionals and chambers could be talking to their local folks about?
I'll jump in if you don't mind, JJ. I don't know how many years ago, I thought it started with Lakewood, with their mayor, using local ordinances or home rule to give us right to repair. And I was on a call with the governor and other developers at that time. And the number one plaintiffs firm said, if they try to enact that, we will sue the municipalities, saying that it violates the Colorado Constitution. So I know that several municipalities answering the call came up with something to give a right to repair, but I'm not aware of those really coming to fruition.
Yeah, Clayton, a number. I think Denver and Aurora both tried it. It didn't really have an impact, right? I think state law ultimately ended up carrying the day. So I wish there was an answer on the defect problem at the local level. Unfortunately, I think we've been trying at it. I've even gone so far as looking at, is there a way that I could build in conjunction with the municipality or housing authority to leverage their quasi-governmental immunity or their governmental immunity? And we have not been able to crack that code either. So unfortunately, all arrows on the defect litigation side point back to the State House. On the local level, though, you're not completely without solutions. I think the fee structure is an area that people can look at. How do the fee structures incentivize what homes are built? And in most places, in most municipalities, the fee structure is based on a per single family home type. Whether it's a 10,000-foot house or a tiny cottage, right? They're charging the same water tap fee. They're charging a lot of the same, permit and connection fees and sewer fees. And what can you do to graduate, if you will, those particular fees to incentivize smaller homes being built? And that's something that I think local municipalities can look at. And the other thing that costs nothing, by the way, that I suggest people do is look, the culture of a building department is really important. And that takes leadership at the local level that, your mayors or your city managers are capable of doing it. And, there are some municipalities that want to get to yes. And there are some for whom they view the process of going through the building permit is job security, right? If your job is process, more process is job security. So strong leadership at the local level can break through that, and that's doesn't cost anything. And that's an area that I think municipalities can look at, and then incentivize and actively rezone the type of housing that you want to see. If we have to go through a zoning battle that's going to be contentious and maybe take a year or two or three or five, we're going to be less likely to do it. But where municipalities have stepped up to the plate and done it earlier, they can incentivize and grease the skids, if you will, for the type of housing that they want to see.
I agree with Carl, JJ. We're getting feed to death in a lot of cases in the affordable space all across the state. Um, I think municipalities need to just realize that we're trying to build affordable housing, which is an advantage to their community and a need in each community. And the easier they can make that, the more economically friendly they can make that. It makes our job easier to make these things pencil, which are very difficult to do. So treating a 60 unit, a 50 unit, a 100 unit affordable project the same way as a 10,000 square foot, $4 million home, it's two different animals, and we need some consideration in our space and able to fast track, move through these processes with as limited economic impact as possible to the project.
And try to remember that every single one of those fees, every one of those added costs has to be recovered. And that's what makes affordable projects not so affordable
Correct.
anymore. And we've talked about, my goodness, how much more expensive do we have to make everything until it becomes affordable?
Yeah.
And the disconnect of that irony seems to be lost on folks. Keeping housing codes up to date, Kim, you're right about that, and new innovations. But Nancy puts a comment in the chat that's worth talking about too. You have individual homeowners they're not professional asset managers necessarily in their professional life, and they're managing what is sometimes and frequently the largest financial asset they have. But who's on the side of the homeowner? If you have a litigator in the office saying you better take this action or you could get sued, we put homeowners in a pretty tough position asking them to have expertise in an area where they just may not.
Yeah, I think, the right, again, if we can't even talk to our homeowners once this starts, right? And explain to them that, look, we're here to fix it. And they'll say, well, we're always the greedy developer. Everybody's seen Fern Gully, right? So, people don't like developers, but if we can, kind of break that free, and the right to repair, that allows us to come in and say, look, your fiduciary is covered because we're going to fix the issue, right? As opposed to it's not going to get fixed. And we're just playing ping pong with these poor HOA boards that sometimes they don't want to be on there, but they need, no one else stepped up to the plate, so they volunteered. And all of a sudden they're stuck in this major financial decision that's going to impact every single person in their community, likely very negatively during the phase of the lawsuit.
Any other questions or comments from our group of chamber professionals and economic development experts and EDCC members?
JJ, my name is Christine Sweetland. If I could ask a question.
Please.
So I currently am a certified residential appraiser, but I also serve on Centennial City Council. So I see firsthand construction defects on both sides of my jobs. And one of the things that I've been trying to obviously, pathway to home ownership is very important, and we're building a lot of apartments. And so I'm curious what you think of my idea of converting an existing apartment building that's at least outside of the construction defect laws, right? 7 years old. Give the people in those apartments the ability to purchase them themselves. So convert it to condos. It becomes more affordable because they're not on the open market, right? They're not competing with anybody. They can get FHA financing, CHFA down payment assistance. And then for the builder or for the developer that owns the apartment building, they get an influx of cash in order to do their next project. So I'm trying to socialize this to see if we could do like a test case. I understand that in order to make this work, we would have to have some incentives to the builder because it's not going to be easy. But I'm just kind of curious as I throw that out there, what your initial thoughts would be on it.
Yeah, Carl, why don't you or Paul could probably talk about condo conversion and then talk a little bit about how buildings are constructed originally. And is it as simple as it sounds to convert an apartment to a condominium for sale? Are there things that were done 7 years ago that would be different today? And then just address that for the council person's question.
So I
Carl,
guess, yeah, the first question, Clayton, is I believe that clock restarts at sale. So, Christine, unfortunately, even if it's outside the statute of repose, that clock has now restarted.
And
And
I've heard that that's not the case. So I did hear that it restarted, but then I was talking to somebody else who actually wrote the law and said that's not the case. But I think it is something we need to look at.
absolutely.
well, go ahead, Clayton.
No. Talking to my attorneys, Carl, probably same attorneys and similar. I've always been told. So if I have a client that tells me, Christine, that I am going to take an apartment and I'm going to convert it, we have to go out and get insurance for them because that entity needs liability coverage, and the underwriters are going to treat that as if it was a new condo.
The other thing from the way, so apartments are generally constructed with a slightly lower level of quality. And that manifests in what, again, I mentioned STC, the sound rating in between and from floor to in between walls and from floor to floor, the finishes from the countertops to the cabinets to some of the fixtures. So if you were going to convert to have a marketable condo, you would need to go in and do at least a soft renovation. Fixtures gets replaced, maybe you're replacing countertops. You can't do anything about the mechanical systems by and large, and you can't do anything about the sound rating. So older apartments generally, at that point we know there's no leaks anywhere. So the three areas that you tend to see defects be the most painful are what we call moisture penetration, the sound attenuation, right? If you're living in a unit where you hear your neighbor's Shih Tzus all day barking, you're going to be a little bit annoyed and more likely to sue. And then mechanical systems. And so the sound attenuation mechanical systems are really going to be locked into place when you're doing an apartment. So again, that would be, I think, a really great area right now. And in general, to allow for condo conversions, but the structure of the law is still preventing us from doing that. So I love the initiative. I would love to see it happen. I think there's a lot of apartment owners right now, especially in newer apartments, that built these apartments assuming rents were going to be somewhere and that perm debt rates were going to be somewhere, and they're underwater. So I think you could see in this environment today, if the law was changed, a lot of newer apartment units where the exit opportunity for the developer that right now may be handing the keys back to the bank would be a condo conversion for sale. And that would be a very good thing in my opinion. But right now, because of everything that Clayton and I mentioned, it's a really it's a proposition that is more fraught with risk than upside from the developer and owner standpoint.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out innovative ways to get around this so that we have those pathways to homeownership. So I appreciate your input on this. I really do. So thank you.
Appreciate you being.
Christine, can I mention
Yes.
something? We've done in other states a pathway to homeownership, even with tax credit projects. It's not available in Colorado right now, so Chaffa's going to get mad at me for throwing this out there. But I love this option, especially in the 60% AMI world where there is no pathway to homeownership, period, no matter what you do. We have developed projects that at year 15, when it comes out of that initial compliance period, it is sold at a discount to appraised value to residents that meet that income criteria, and the state agency will actually tote the note. We lose a little bit. Well, we really don't lose money on that project. We're selling it at hopefully an increased valuation, but at a discount to current market appraised. And we built it with the intent of selling it to begin with. As Carl mentioned, a lot of apartments are built with lower standards than he would build a for sale product. Fortunately, we don't do that. Even in our affordable projects, we've got granite countertops, better cabinets, better flooring, better mechanical, better appliances, and ours tend to hold up. And the STC ratings, it's the biggest complaint for renters is noise transition or between the floors. We even put another underlayment that really makes it pretty much soundproof in everything we build. So there are some paths, they're longer term oriented, but they will impact that lower income tenant and really entrenches them to the area that they're living in. It gives them hope, and they tend to take very good care of their units in that first 15 years, just with the hopes of being able to buy that product at a later date.
I think that the creativity we're all thinking about is certainly important. The frustration that comes is that we're trying to think creatively how to get around a policy that we could just change with some political will at the Capitol, which might be the better or longer term solution is rather than figuring out how to get around bad policy, let's not make bad policy. Let's make good policy and go from there. Sarah, you had a question. Sarah, I see in the chat, do you want to come off mute and ask that? Because it's a complex one about land values and residual land values and fees, and I don't want to mess up your question. So Sarah Dunmeyer, do you want to come off mute and share?
Hello, yes, happy to. My question is just with how costs have increased so much, and there are a lot of development fees, especially a lot with inclusionary zoning right now, for affordable housing that's applied to all housing types. So my question is just what about land costs? And is there a way that land can absorb those costs and the cost of land can come down instead of passing off those fees and costs to already constrained rents and sale prices?
Great question, Sarah. So there's a couple things that, as my dad would always say, land is fungible, right? Which means land has whatever value we assign to it. And so if, in these scenarios, as you load fees up, the land does become less valuable or would need to cost less in order to make the development work. However, the value of the land, once it gets that low, is not enticing for the landowner to sell. And in many cases, they're going to sit there and stay on it. The other issue that we see is, if you're looking out on kind of what we'd call a greenfield development, an old farm that we're going to put the roads and the infrastructure in, those costs themselves are very high, right? So you may because of the fees, find yourself in a scenario where, yeah, the land's, driven down, but you can't even improve the land and put the roads in and the streets in and the infrastructure in based on how much the fees cost, and then still have a profitable project. So I know folks, think ultimately, hey, yeah, this will just drive the value of the land down. I've had a council member of Denver say the same to me, and my response is, yeah, but then they're not going to sell and you're not going to get any units built. And that's what we're seeing right now, is that I think, these fees have loaded up so high and everybody thinks, the landowner is going to take the hit, but why would they? They'll just wait.
Right. I paid up from land just because the entitlement was already there. A lot of the infrastructure was in. If it pencils for my deal, even though it's too expensive, we still buy it. But land's worth what somebody will pay for it.
Well, I see there are questions. So if you have some more, please send an email. But I want to thank Clayton, Carl, and Paul. Thank you for your time, your expertise, and knowledge on the details of this. It's certainly, as we've mentioned, a top competitive issue for Colorado that every member of the EDCC and all of our local chambers and economic development corps around the state care very, very much about. It really is genuinely a statewide issue with challenges in communities far and wide. So we appreciate this discussion. Lots more resources at EDCC, and I'll turn it back over to Kim to talk about those and other places members can be involved as we continue to try to make Colorado still the best place for business and the best place for folks to live and raise families. But to do that, you want to have a home. And so making that affordable is a top priority, I think, for all of us. And thanks again to the EDCC for creating this forum where we can all get better educated and better informed about some of the policy barriers to delivering that promise to the residents of our communities.
Thank you so much, JJ. I appreciate your time and expertise, along with Paul, Carl, and Clayton. You guys have always been amazing partners to, kind of work through the policy side of these things. And of course, EDCC is here to support through that process. And I had made the comment earlier with the team that when I was with Metro Denver EDC over 10 years ago, we were talking about it then, and we're still talking about it today, and we need to find a solution. And with everybody, this is the call to action, right? And that EDCC is here to really rally the troops, because it's going to take all of us to really create a Colorado that we all want to be proud of, and that we can really help our people live. At the end of the day, that's what economic development is it's a group of programs and policies that positively influence our economy and allow our people to have good paying jobs, have the houses that they need, childcare that they need. It's all about the person. And so it is our job as our superhero. So channel that inner superhero to help us get there. So thank you to our moderator and our panelists for your time and insight today. Also, I wanted to point out we do have several committees. It's not just Bobby and I and our 26-member board, but we do have over 100 volunteers that are helping us every day create content like this, help us with the communication, professional development, data, as well as our public policy. So thank you to the Events and Programming Committee that has brought this to us today. I want to make a remark too, is that we're going to have a 3.0 at the Drive Lead Succeed conference that's going to start to talk about homeowners insurance and the lack of. And that all of these compounding problems are never going to let us get to the point that we need to be at with the amount of housing that we need. And so we need to figure this out together. A few follow-up items. We will be sending out this recording and presentation once we button it all up and package it up for you. But it will also be found on within the virtual Knowledge Vault, as well as the virtual series landing page. And if you have any questions past this, please send them to Bobby. We do have a 5-minute survey. This is how we bring content like this to you all. We need to know what you need to hear so that we are providing the best content possible to train you and to educate our folks. The other thing that's going to come from this is a one-pager that's going to allow you to go to your elected officials and point out this is what we need to address, or else we're never going to get to where we need to get to. So that one-pager is going to be coming out from our professionals today, so that you all can go and have these discussions at the local level. Don't forget, we have our Drive Lead Succeed conference coming up in October. Registration is live. We are looking for sponsorships. Things aren't cheap anymore. So the most help we can get, we need to have it. And for any additional resources, tools, the network, this is the EDCC is the one and only organization in the state that is really bringing together this community of professionals. So please join us by going to edcconline.org. Have a wonderful, blessed day, and thank you all for joining us.